All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about something pretty cool. How a 2,000-year-old philosophical puzzle is actually the key to understanding modern risk. It all starts with a question that feels, well, kind of impossible to answer.
I mean, think about it. If you're a project manager, a team lead, really, if you're anyone trying to get something done, you face this every single day. We make our plans, we have our Gantt charts, but the future, it just doesn't play by our rules, does it? So what are we supposed to do?
Well, the first thing we got to get our heads around is that not all future events are the same. There's a huge difference between two types of what might happen. On the one hand, you've got determined events. These are the easy ones, kind of. They follow the laws of physics. The sun rising tomorrow? Yep, we can count on that. But then you have contingent events. These are all about human choice. You know, like when a dev team is in a sprint planning meeting trying to decide on a feature. That outcome isn't predictable like gravity. It's decided by people talking, arguing, and eventually agreeing. And that is where all the trouble and all the opportunity really lies. And you know who was thinking about this exact problem over 2,000 years ago? Aristotle. Seriously, he used this famous thought experiment about a sea battle to try and figure out how we can even talk about a future that's still up in the air.
The idea he was wrestling with is called a future contingent. It's basically any statement about the future that could totally go either way. It's not true yet, it's not false yet, its fate literally hangs on a choice someone hasn't made.
And here's Aristotle in his own words. He says, look, it's a simple fact. A sea fight must either take place tomorrow or not. One of those has to happen, right? But, and this is the genius part, it is not necessary today that it will happen, and it's not necessary today that it won't. The future is still wide open. And that's the puzzle in a nutshell. There's a basic rule in logic, the law of the excluded middle, that says any statement, let's call it P, means that P or not P has to be true. So, the battle will happen or the battle won't happen must be true. But how is that possible if the battle will happen isn't true yet, and the battle won't happen isn't true yet either? It's a real head-scratcher.
This little problem stumped people for centuries. It wasn't until the 20th century that logicians really took another crack at it. And to solve it, they had to do something radical. They had to invent a whole new kind of logic.
See, for the longest time, logic was built on this one core principle called bivalence. It's super simple. Every statement is either true or false. That's it. No middle ground. But for Aristotle's sea battle, that just doesn't work. So they came up with a pretty wild idea. They said, what if we just add a third option? What if a statement can be true, false, or indeterminate? This is basically creating a formal logical way to say maybe. It's a way of saying, hey, the jury's still out on this one. So this logician, Lukasiewicz, built the system around this idea. Now, if you look at the table, the first two rows are totally normal. True or not true is true, false or not false is true. But check out that last row. If the sea battle is indeterminate, his system says the entire statement, the battle will happen or won't, is also indeterminate. And that just doesn't feel right. It breaks that fundamental law Aristotle was trying to save. So close, but no cigar. Okay, so the first attempt didn't quite stick the landing. The logicians had to go back to the drawing board. They needed a way for maybe to exist without breaking the whole system. And here is the fix. It's so clever. By just tweaking the definition of how OR works, they created a new system. Now look at that last row. Even when the statement, the battle will happen, is indeterminate, the bigger statement, the battle will happen or it won't, now comes out as true. Boom! The law of the excluded middle is saved, and we still get to have an open, unwritten future.
So what this all boils down to is that you have to think about truth in relation to time. A statement like, there will be a sea battle tomorrow, is indeterminate right now. But tomorrow, after the admirals have made their choices, it's going to snap into place as either definitely true or definitely false. Time is the missing ingredient.
Okay, I know that was a pretty deep dive into logic, but what on earth does this have to do with your job or your project? Well, this is where we connect it all back to the real world, and you'll see why this ancient idea is a total game changer.
Let's make that connection explicit. How does Aristotle's sea battle help a project manager in the 21st century? Simple. It gives us a brand new and way more accurate category for thinking about risk.
Think about something like the Responsible Business Alliance Code of Conduct. You've got these categories: labor, safety, ethics. Can you really assign a percentage probability to whether a manager will make an ethical choice under pressure, or whether a tired employee will follow a safety rule? No way. These aren't coin flips. They are genuinely indeterminate. Their outcome depends on thousands of tiny human decisions yet to be made.
And what that means is that most of our standard risk models are missing half the story. We are fantastic at calculating the probability of determined things, like the failure rate of a server. But we are terrible at accounting for the risks that come from what people might choose to do. We're not accounting for the truly indeterminate. And here is the big takeaway from all of this. Very often, the most dangerous risks to your project, to your company, to anything, they don't come from the things you can calculate. They come from the things that are a true maybe, the things that we wrongly try to stuff into a spreadsheet as a simple probability. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. Look at what you're working on. Where is there a risk that isn't just a probability you can calculate, but a true indeterminate maybe? The moment you can tell the difference between the two, you can start to plan for the future as it really is, unwritten and full of choice.